I used to avoid synthesizers and hardware, yet still managed to get placement streams and enjoy making music in general. At some point I even asked myself, why the hell to use all of those blinking noise-making boxes if you can have more than that on your laptop? But then I tried to use hardware more and more, and the reason I fell in love with it is not the analog sound. The synth I have here is not nearly as expensive and flavorful as big guns, but I think that's how the trial period should look for everyone. Even something cheaper will do. So before you grab your first toy or sell a kidney for a Moog, then better watch this video from start to finish. If you think of synthesizers, you probably used to hear evolving sequences and modulated bass line like this. But I wanted to check, can it drum and bass? I could go straight into Wavetable and make it act like Serum, but let's use some unique engines for the synth instead. For the first oscillator, let's go with Carpus. And you know what? Playing with those parameters like wave and timbre already gives some cool ideas, but in fact let's add a little bit more beef by introducing the second oscillator, a wave shaper maybe. Let's bring the volume up a bit. Now it's a great time to introduce some modulations. So first and the basic one I guess would be to modulate this filter, and we can do that by assigning the cutoff. Oh, you're not gonna see the numbers, but trust me, I'm assigning the filter to cutoff, and in fact you can see here on the screen. And I'm assigning it to cycling envelope, which is different than the voltage control envelope, obviously. Now it opens up a little whenever I play. Let me just crank this filter down. By the way, Mini Freak has digital synth engines, but Filter is pure analog. I think it's time to introduce a bit more variation to the sound. We can go with LFO1 to timbre. Let's increase the amount. It's basically gonna jump, which introduce a cool atonal effect, if you ask me. Let's bring a little bit of a human touch to it by assigning this wave knob to one of the macro sliders here. And I can do that by shift pressing, clicking macro, move the wave knob. And now whenever I move this macro. Okay, but to not bore you with making a sound from scratch, since it's not the main topic of this video, let me just quickly add some effects. So for the first one, let's choose chorus for this one. A little bit of distortion, not the delay. That's what I was talking about. And since we have three effects, let's just use reverb for the third effect. Now after recording it with a little bit of help of raw feedback automation, some hybrid reverb throws, and simple cuts and edits, it sounds a little bit something like this. But it's not that you always need to design your own sounds, at least with modern synths and their presets. Sometimes it is cool to just tweak a few knobs here and there and come up with something different. Just keep in mind that in some cases, things like adding simple unison needs a little bit of finger stretching. But I guess your wife and partner will thank you for that ability in a room slightly different than your home studio. Okay, but besides of very subjective things like the magic of twisting physical knobs and analog character, up till this point, it seems like a no different experience than using plugins. Obviously with some limitations, since I was forced to play with sound modulation in order to get this simple vibrato effect, which could be done in a few clicks inside the plugin. But take a look at this project. There are no MIDI clips besides of this one, which is only for automating the feedback from Roar, but that's a different story. And I know you can do about the same with plugins and freeze and flatten, but let's be honest for a second. How many times you dedicated to audio while having this many options to tweak the sound or MIDI at any point in time? Obviously, I saved this preset, I made it before, and in fact, I have a couple of different cool presets I made, but sometimes I totally forget about saving preset, or I just basically twist the knob and then the sound is gone and I can't do anything about it. Instead of spending time on finding it or maybe designing the sound from scratch, which would be much easier with a plugin, I basically learned to work with what I have. And I do this either by applying effects, coding, or scraping the whole part if it really sounds bad. But my point is that as a 32-year-old working full-time job, trying to make my wife and pets happy and making music and videos in the meantime, whenever I fire up this synth, I'm dedicated to finishing as much music as possible. With plugins and an option to recall everything at any point in time, I get a little bit lazy and tempted to leave things for later. Okay, I realized that it became a very subjective and slightly different video for my regular viewers, but if you're still there, just let me know if analog synths are the topic you want to hear more about from time to time. That also would be a good reason for me to get some new synths and treat them as investment. You can also leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you're new here, that would be highly appreciated. But back to the topic. Analog synths seem to be a grown-up solution for your main sound source, and by the fact you need to spend adult money to get some synths. But you know what's also mature and free? Learning to make some cool sounds with stock synthesizers instead of plugins. Yeah, the video is right here, so click it if you're really not into hardware.